which is awesome. I'm very, very excited. There was a small hitch at the top of the sale where we had to move over the email server. I picked an email solution from the early 2000s. So, and then we also had a small hitch in the flow. I was reflecting on this, apart from you never want me to be looking at UI flow. But I was reflecting on how during the testing of the flow, I was irritated by this piece, but just in my brain, I didn't wake up to the irritation that probably many, many other people would be confused to. So I love the fact that sometimes irritation is a really, really useful thing. So I should point out, for those people who are planning to engage the sale, one of the things that that's kind of irritating about the flow is there's a long gap between when you make the BitPay membership payment and when you get the confirmation email. But you really, 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 really need to wait for the confirmation email from BitPay, and then everything will be great. If you click on the membership request button that the flow takes you to, it will take you back to the process to agreeing the membership, because it hasn't marked that your payment's been received. It will mark it once the payment has been confirmed. But as we know, there's a bit of a delay with the network to get the confirmation. But apart from that, things have been going quite well. I should also say right at the top that we will have a session. I've changed the Zoom room ID for the private sale session. I'm posting that to the private sale channel and to some of the participants I've been engaged with privately. But the co-op now has an official Zoom room channel. I'm hopefully going to get out of the business of paying the Zoom room bill for the co-op personally. That would be awesome. And let's see. So for those private sale participants who have any questions whatsoever, and there have been lots of really good questions, bring your best questions to that session so that other people can be educated. Okay, so those are the private sale updates I have. Ed, did you want to add anything?
Well, one of the frequently asked questions is when will people get scheduled for interviews? How long do we expect the process to take for those interviews? Is it within the next hour, or is it stretching over a few days?
Yeah, it's definitely stretching over a few days. People should relax. Don't sit by the phone waiting.
Well, I guess from a purchaser's perspective, they also want to make sure they don't miss out. If we max out at 15 million, we'll turn people away after that. So there's a few people that are anxious that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so people's orders will be processed. All the orders requests are timestamped, and people's orders will be processed in the order that they are received. So people don't have to worry about that. Also, as a perk for all those intrepid souls who did testing with us, we're counting the timestamps as happening when they were doing the testing. So we really, this is in keeping with the co-op spirit of rewarding participation. Very, very happy to have received their help and happy to support them as well.
Another frequently asked question is about international participants. In other words, people outside of the United States. What type of accredited participant form they need to reply, and just in case others haven't heard, what we're just asking them to write sort of not a resident of the U.S. or something similar on their form and returning it that way as an upload. Another question, unless this was fixed, is some people had issues with in the KYC upload, if they needed to upload 2 documents and the form only allowed 1 document to upload. What I've said is you can upload that second document with the accredited participant questionnaire, because we'll see all the uploads together. So that's a workaround for that UI deficiency. So those are some of the frequent questions I've seen.
Yeah, those are the same ones I've been seeing. Absolutely. Okay. Any other updates from the co-op leadership with respect to the sale?
Not about the sale specifically, but that the Discord channel is alive and there are people there. So if you do show up, there'll be people there to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the next point I wanted to make, which was the conversation is lively on Discord. So it's good to see that this is beginning to happen. I wanted to point out that I'm going to be moving away from Slack, which is the more public-facing thing, and more to the Discord channel for engaging with the membership. More and more, I want my time and attention to be with the membership. So that's something to think about. Become a member. Soon the membership sign up will be open to the public more generally. And after that, and in the not too distant, right now, we only allow Bitcoin. We're using BitPay to pay for membership. And this is in part a filtration process. We're trying to make sure that the members that come in are people who are at least savvy enough to be able to pay in Bitcoin. I think that's really important at this stage of the game. But we will be adding other methods of payment. In particular, the next one will be Ether. So that's coming down the pipe. Let's see. Are there any?
So another comment about Discord, just so people are aware. Like any of these social networks, you should, apply some filter when looking at people's handles and their reputation, as there could be some spoofs, someone else claiming to be me or Greg or Kenny or whoever, because you can create whatever handle you want. So just be careful to sort of let these handles develop their reputations.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah. And
you can slightly get around that, though, by making sure that everyone who is the real person has some sort of admin in the channel and are in the upper right corner of Discord. You guys have seen that interface, right? So just make sure that all the chiefs, all the high-level actors have, tags properly, and they have admin access, so you can see them clearly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm new to Discord, so I haven't seen that, but that sounds great, Christian.
Right. It will drastically help you with phishing attacks. So.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. So let's see. That covers those pieces. I did want to just mention as a slight tangent, but an interesting one. I had a very good conversation with Glenn Braun over the weekend. And Glenn was working with a holdings company on identity solutions. So we got into a discussion about what identity might mean in a world that's enabled by Rolang and the behavioral types. And what I've been kind of proposing now for a couple of years is that, the notion of essentially there's an alignment between the Bitcoin blockchain idea and the Ethereum idea of address as a place for communication, right? So you can communicate values, or you can communicate other kinds of data. But that's that notion of, and so there's an agent behind that address that is using the address to communicate, right? There are actually agents on either side of that address. But that's not quite sufficient to be a notion of identity. We can't think of address as identity. And when we move over into the RChain world, where address becomes generalized to channel, then that, again, channel is insufficient for the notion of identity of the human agents, right? we do. I mean, Jem has pointed out this many times that when you have interaction over multiple channels, like multi-factor authentication, right? The world is already moving in this direction. For example, I think a lot of people adopt the protocol of, if you're sending me an address, make sure you send it via multiple channels, please. So I know it's really you. and that, I think, encapsulates a core intuition, something that I think that everyone is beginning to build a consensus around, which is that identity is related to expected behavior over a collection of channels. Like, if I send you something on email and I send you something over text, and I send you something in Slack, then there's going to be a kind of consistency across the behavior of those channels that is a strong indicator that it's really you. And you can begin to express those kinds of constraints and those kinds of characterizations of identity inside Rolang, and also with the Rolang behavioral types. And so we're excited about exploring this notion. I think also there's a recursive interplay between identity and reputation, because reputation is also related to expected behavior over a collection of channels over a period of time. So if I send you a certain message and your reputation is one of being timely, then I'm expecting a response within a certain window of time at another channel. That's an example of. And so now there's this relationship between identity as expected behavior over a collection of channels over time, and reputation as expected behavior over a collection of channels over a period of time. Anyway, so just got to keep the conversation a little bit more technical and exciting. If it's all numbers all the time, Greg is not a happy boy.
Yeah, and just to mention again, this is something that RChain and holdings company are looking at very deeply right now, is identity, or well, with a lot of interest, deeply as we have time. That in addition to the community group that Jim has been leading and inviting people to, RChain Holdings been having a set of conversations with folks too. So there's a lot of activity actually to work this issue.
Yeah,
we're dealing with identity from the other side, the proxy for the user,
right?
Viewport identity that acts on the user behalf under his control. Okay, Greg is dealing with the side of looking out, identifying things,
yes,
giving them identity by identifying them and developing, in essence, your own proxy for that individual.
Yeah. And both are important, and both are actually related to very deep notions, like identity and theory of mind, for example, are this way of thinking about identity and theory of mind are actually, they're linked like this. Without going too much further, so there's a discussion currently underway because I'm so tardy on the white paper about whether we should package up the mobile process for programming the blockchain, mobile process calculator for programming the blockchain, and the architecture document as a kind of white paper by fiat. Instead, what I've tried to communicate to the community, and I just want to drop this here, like in the video channel that people can reference. So you can think of the mobile process paper, and I have a link for that. I'll just, so that when people are, hear me say this, they know which one I'm talking about here. So here we go. So now let's go back to Zoom and then go to the chat. So when I talk about the mobile process for programming the blockchain paper, that's the one. That's the what paper. So what are we talking about as a mathematical abstraction and its relationship to the market requirements, right? So that's the what paper. And then you want to get from the mathematical abstraction to some actionable plan, right? And so Ed Ever, the practical one, kind of drove this process. And here's the current how paper. Okay, that's the architecture paper. And then the paper that I'm working on is the why paper. Why would you go and do this? Now, each one of these papers actually talks a little bit about rationale, because it's impossible to have these kinds of discussions without some form of motivation. But in the case of the paper that I'm working on, it's all about purpose. It's all about why would you get out of bed and do this kind of crazy stuff? There's so many other fun things to do, like play with your children or play West African drums, you know. But this kind of crazy stuff, we're doing it for specific reasons, which we've talked about for several years, and I think why so many people are excited about the project. So we're recording that information. So our position currently is that the combination of the what paper, the how paper, and the why paper equals the white paper. And the reason we have done we've done this in this way is because if we had combined them all into one paper, as I did in the scenario white paper, it would be over 100 pages long. And nobody wants to read a 100-page long document.
Even translating that would take so long.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we broke it down, and this gives people who have slightly different perspectives and motivations the chance to go and find their path through the information. So that's something that we wanted to get out there. And I don't mind taking my time on this paper. I know I've broken my promise twice in terms of delivery, and I feel terrible about it. But I'd much rather have a high quality offering than to put out something that isn't going to hit the mark. I'm excited about the paper, but it still needs some love and attention. So that's where we are with that.
I think also over the past couple of weeks around the token sale, there's been a number of documents that talk about the co-op. There's the FAQ. There's the details, and there's the private sale info page that describe an awful lot. This project came into being in a much different path than many crypto projects do, that start with a white paper and questionable ability to execute and not necessarily all the technical things there. Obviously, this project came into being in a much different way, where the foundations and the mathematics and the motivation of Greg and others to solve big problems. So anyway, I'm trying to explaining in a rationale sort of way why we don't have a white paper in the conventional, quote unquote, conventional sense.
Yeah, I guess the full white paper has the how, what, and why, as well as our other key documents in the architecture.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And we've also done our level best to communicate with the community and with the co-op membership in new members now, the win, right? So we've pasted up our milestone documents and the work breakdown structure and how we're approaching this. And we're attempting to be as transparent as possible. So if anybody ever has any questions about that, then please don't hesitate, ask in the channels that you have, and we'll do our best to link you to that information. And if it turns out that, it's a question that we haven't thought about, great. We're excited, that's the kind of engagement we really need to make sure that this is a high quality offering. Okay, so that covers all of those things. I think there was a discussion. Yeah, so some people have asked about New York participation in the private sale. So the co-op did take a position on that, and everyone needs to know that. There's a council has said that with respect to the BIT license requirements of New York, that we're walking a fine line, but that we do have an argument that we have conviction around, and that we've done we've also initiated the process of we've initiated the process of applying for a bit license, and so if it turns out that they make the call that we need to apply, then we're already underway with that process. So, but our position currently is that essentially the ROC Rev combo is a software access token, and so that gets us out of the requirements to have a bit license. So it's important that people understand that that's the position that we've taken. Again, we want to be as transparent as possible, but based upon that position and our analysis of what would happen if they turned around and said, no, you really need a bit license, then all of that seems to be a reasonable risk to the cooperative. Okay, so let me stop there because that was a lot of updates, and check in and see if people have any questions, and then we'll move on to some more detailed technical conversation.
Hey, Greg, one quick question with regard to New York State and the bit license. Can you just say very concisely again how it is that we're steering between those horns there? Not the part about having already begun the process of application, that I got, but the part as to why bit license wouldn't apply. Yeah,
effectively, if you read through the requirements, what they were aiming for was to provide guidance and governance around exchanges. And the co-op is not in any way an exchange, nor does it intend to be an exchange, right? The co-op is to provide a platform on which you could build an exchange, for example, but that's not the intent, and that's not the intent of the Rev or the ROC. The intent of the Rev is to be able to run software on this giant decentralized distributed global computer, right? That's the intent, and that in no way makes it an exchange. So we have to clarify with New York their position with respect to that, but that's our reading of the intent behind the bit license regulations.
Yeah. Right now, it's the activist community that has a market and awards ROC for GitHub issues and is engaging the community in getting stuff done. But it's because people want to run on the chain, they're not making money. But there is a process. They are contractors to the co-op.
Yeah. So does that answer your question, Danny?
It does, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that that we had a pretty good argument, because I know from having worked in banking for a number of years myself, regulators are very, very good at making you into something that you are saying you are not, even when you are.
We understand what the risks are, and our read of the risks are under the most conservative reading, we're, even if they come back and say, no, you really have to do this, we're still in a good position. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have some initial paperwork filed that you are in process. That usually goes a long way to keeping them at bay. So sounds good to me.
Good. Okay, any other questions before we move on to more technical discussion?
Yeah, maybe I could give a small insight in how we do this decentralized governance about allocating budgets to issues and burning budgets over issues.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, I will share my screen. Wait a minute. So here's a report where all the links are in that will be presented. But mostly it goes like this. Greg has been so friendly to allow for decentralized budget allocation. And he sends me 1 million ROC, and I'm authorized to manage that fund. And you can follow it, of course, on the blockchain on this address. And then in GitHub, there's about 30 people now who are actively involved in RChain, and they raise issues. I could show it here. Okay, so for example, we have a issue called GitHub voting issue. I take this as an example because the whole process of allocating a budget to it and the payment to Jake Gilbert has been done. So here's a discussion about the subject. And then I go back to what he did was he made a voting system for setting priorities of issues. And that's very nice because it works with ROC. You could send ROC to a certain issue and then it increases the vote. It's currently working on the test net, but like this we could have a decentralized order into the subjects that we want to work upon. So you could vote and then it loads. And, okay.
This is nice. This is very nice. Hey, Kenny, have you been coordinating with HJ about any of this? I can't hear you.
Yeah, we have a meeting about this tomorrow.
Awesome! This is awesome.
So kind of, but not exactly yet.
Well, I mean, you know, the thing that I'm getting excited about is the just-in-time nature of the co-op. Right before we get into the membership meeting, we're starting to have some good solutions for, at least, yes, you know, straw people to tilt at.
It's extremely experiment, so it's very beta, and but we are figuring out processes how it could be done. So
nice.
I show you a spreadsheet where we allocate budgets to issues, and it's based on weak consensus. So the rule is that there must be 3 activists that set a budget for an issue. And when there are 3, then it's enough, and that's just the average of what they say. So if I look for number 85, then the average was $925. And Jake himself, he said, well, I've done so much work for it, I want $1,000 for it. And Katie Valentine said also one, and Kid Blake, and me, myself, I said, it's a bit more, it's $1,025. So this is averaged, and then the budget is set for this issue. So then you have the budget burning. So sometimes a team is working on the same issue, but on this special issue, Jake has only been working. So I go again to 85 here. And then he said, for the burning, I have burned 80% of the budget. And I said, Patrick said that he was for 90%, and I said he was also 80% burned, because he has to implement it, and it has to go from test to real, etc. So there's some 70% left to work on this issue. That means for this month, for August, he would get 9,250 ROC. Okay. And the rule for this is there must be at least 2 activists that set a percentage of budget burden. That's kind of peer control. And it's also based on trust and good normal thinking. Then we have the book accounting process. So everybody they get the payment when an invoice is sent. And this will be, this is done with some, how do you call it? Yeah, there's an add-on. I'm working just with the tools I master. So there's a G sheet, spreadsheet, and it has a mail merge functionality. So you can send personalized mails, and that's very useful for the activist to create an invoice. I could show it also, but well, that takes too much time at the moment. So then about management and reporting. Greg receives regularly a report about how many activists are busy now, an overview of their activities and the results, and the ROC spends. So if we fail, then Greg can just stop sending us ROC, and we can try then to improve it. And if it's a complete disaster, then it just stops sending. So, and if it's successful, then we expect more chunks of ROC. So, and then as more people join, the system has to be delegated to people who we trust. That's about it. So, any questions?
I don't have any questions at this point, HJ, but I'm really excited about the work. I mean, basically, these are the kinds of things where the better solutions are built by having this kind of experience under our belt, right? So we have to go and dig in and try these kinds of things out before we start to be able to identify, smell, sense good stuff for governance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Yeah, no, this is great. This is great. I'm really excited about this.
We'll see how it goes, and I'm happy with your feedback. Cool.
Thank you. Okay, I don't want to put Mike or Tim on the spot, but I was wondering if you wanted to. Unfortunately, you guys have gone way ahead of me on the VM development, and I know we'll talk about the VM stuff on the Dev Stand-Up. But I wondered if you guys felt comfortable just giving an update on the work on the VM, if only to educate me, because I've been heads down on the private sale.
Sure. We're following the general strategy of starting with the transition function and working backward from there. So doing a breadth first kind of approach. So we've got the transition function written. I've got a pull request out for location.store. Just approved Tim's pull request for get next strand. So right now we are working on the first layer of stuff below the transition function to make, to get that part coded up. We have lots of placeholders. We're still trying to figure out when to use ADTs versus versus union types versus other approaches. Figuring out when objects are the unique alternative, like NIV or invalid or false, when those things are the unique alternative to some other object with more data, or whether there are multiple things. So we're trying to get our types straight as we do it. But yeah, things are progressing. Meta has put or is working on getting each class its own entry in Jira, so that we can track progress on the classes there. As far as testing goes, unit testing is more of a design tool in that you write down what you want to have happen and then write your code to match it. Given that we're doing a port, we don't know what ought to happen up front. It ought to match whatever the C++ stuff does, right? So we're probably going to concentrate more on integration tests than on unit tests, but we are putting in, we're probably going to put in stubs, placeholders for unit tests, given that the VM will likely continue to be developed beyond the C++ as it is now. For example, we probably want 64-bit arithmetic, not just 32-bit stuff. And there are probably other features that will go into it later. So that's our approach and roughly where we're at. Tim, did you have anything to add to that?
Not really, besides that I just started working on the signal handling stuff.
Sweet. Thank you very much. That was a really excellent overview. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make a little picture for those people who are oriented visually. What Mike is talking about is the transition function goes from VM state to VM state. So you start with a VM state, and in this case, that VM state includes, well, obviously the opcodes or the bytecodes. It contains an arbel table and the threads and a bunch of things like that. So that's there's a context tree which represents the dependency graph amongst threads that are outstanding, and so that represents the VM state. The transition function is what takes you from one VM state to the next. And so what we're doing is we're driving it out by we write down the transition function, but in order to write that down, that is going to require that we have implementations of pieces of the VM state, one step at a time. And then we'll have a kind of, so this is what drives completeness. When we can actually write this function down, then we know we have enough of the arbel or the rosette state represented that we can actually execute the VM. So that's how we're driving this. And what Mike is talking about is doing that in this kind of disciplined approach that allows us to get, as we said, get enough of this function written that we can keep refining this implementation. So thanks for that. Do folks from any of the other sub components, the comms layer or the storage layer, want to give a quick update to the community? I know Chris at last Dev Stand Up. Chris gave us a great demo. If you want to give a demo, Chris, I'm sure the community would appreciate it.
Ooh, I'd love to, but I am not set up for that.
No worries. No problem. I don't mean to throw people on the spot. So, but do you want to schedule something for next time?
I can do that demo next time. I can show what's different with it. By way of update, I don't remember what I've told this group in the past, but I've lowered the transport layer down to the socket level. It's about 80% done. I'm not seeing any obvious wins with that, and it's a huge pain. So yeah, sure. That's what I've been engaged with. But yeah, next time I'd be happy to show Griff's key value store distributed across several nodes. like I did last time. I've updated it to what I think is the most recent version I can get my hands on. So it should follow along his demo better.
Sweet. This is really, really nice. This is awesome. Any comments? I should stop here and just check and see if there are any questions or comments from the community about what you've heard about some of these technical updates.
Well, I guess I have a question. I mean, are you guys going to be on the road towards the end of this year, for like DevCon or anything for presenting these ideas, or will you guys be really deep, still working, not really interested?
So that's a great question. And it's always a delicate balance, right? If you're too much on the road, then it's hard to get work done. If you're too isolated, then you don't pick up on some of the cool things that are happening in the market or with other projects. So yeah, it's a great question. Right now, what we have a plan for is a kind of a developer retreat. So we're going to do the Vulkan Mind Melt thing in November amongst us. And what we're hoping is that becomes an RChain DevCon the following year. And so part of those sessions will just be planning for that, and part of planning for the following year. But part of those sessions will be to accelerate the development of the deliverables. So that's currently where our focus is doing the community building the team, and then beginning to expand that out to invite other developers to our party. So that's a great question. We will be participating in other conferences. I honestly, right now, I haven't looked at my conference invite list in a while. But I can talk about that next week to see what the plans are. It's just right at the current moment, my focus has been on other things. And I really like it in Seattle during this time of year. All right. So any other questions before maybe hearing additional technical updates?
Well, at some point, I want to really get into with you the mathematical nature of RChain and how that relates to these tops, which represent positions in graph space, dividing the context and creating islands of consistency that basically run into the FLP impossibility, and well, I don't want to get into it now, but I really want to dive into this with you because I think the differential propositional calculus and perspective and the idea of relating this space that you've created with these positions to the quantum model, which you're saying is the difficulty you're having right now. And I at least want to talk to you about an approach to using the differential propositional calculus basis or any mathematical system, since quantum logic is metamathematical, to represent the differences in these perspectives as being connected by differential equations.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But really what I wanted to talk about was the identity workshop, and we've had some great sessions. We built a a toy contract to approve claims, and we've centered in on a self-sovereign identity for the community, providing OpenID service discovery on IPFS for the Uport identity. We're in the investigation stages. It's just a pain in the butt in that, you know, we have to run these component servers to make this work, but it's really simple in concept. And then how we put claim proofs on that and use it for a single sign-on for all the tools we use in the community.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, I definitely want to hear more about that. That's for sure. Very interesting. Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about the proof of claims approach that Sovereign takes versus the verification protocol, which is more dynamic that we were doing a few years back. So it's an interesting space. I'd like to think about it a little bit more. Cool. Griff, did you have any updates you wanted to give about the storage layer?
I do. So in my last demo, I showed an interface and Prolog unification query processing. The next goal is to take that work and plug in a real database to it. In this case, we're going to start out with Lightning. So I've just completed a test program, a Scala test program that manipulates the Lightning database, which is written in C, and I'm satisfied with that. So what I'm turning to now is actually integrating my interface API with Lightning.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road, because if I understand correctly, Lightning is flat keys to
correct
values. So then the trick is how you get from Prolog terms to flat keys.
Right. And
go ahead.
I will be definitely paying a lot of attention to testing and benchmarks to keep it all very empirical.
Very good. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that the path solution that I came up with for Mongo is suboptimal, but I haven't had a time to think about alternative solutions. So I'm interested to see what you come up with.
Great.
Yeah. Very good. Cool. That's really cool. I'm really interested to see how fast Lightning goes, if they live up to their name. Okay, so we've got COM, storage, VM. I know that there were some questions about the cost model, and in particular the source-to-source translation and security. So I had a nice call with Kent this morning in which we talked a little bit about that, and we've talked about these ideas before. And what our goals are and what some interim solutions are. But the big picture that people should be carrying away is that ultimately all sensitive code has to be on the blockchain, so that you have the kinds of security guarantees with respect to components that have been deployed that you would expect of financial transactions, because at the end of the day, this is the code that's going to be running those financial transactions. So it's just as sensitive. So think about a tool chain, and I'll give the example of the Roland compiler. So the Roland compiler, has a parser, and then the parser goes through some code rewrites and optimizations. And there's an annotation phase, and then there may be some more rewrites and optimizations, and then there's bytecode produced. So each one of those stages, we should be thinking of in the ultimate solution. Those stages, that pipeline is programmable. Okay, so different components could be plugged in. Now the question is, how are those components going to talk to each other? And the answer is the blockchain. So when a component, for example, takes source and turns it into a new form of source, annotated source, for example, the annotated source gets written to the blockchain. And then that's what's picked up by the next component of the pipeline. So that's a part of a much larger security picture that we've been contemplating for quite some time. So I know that there were some questions in Slack about these security features. We have been talking about this for a very long time. What I notice about these kinds of conversations is that it's kind of an interesting dynamic. So a particular understanding of the requirements and the solutions that we're offering gets presented to the community, and then new people come into the community and they start reinvestigating they start following the same path, and they start asking the same questions. And it's interesting to see whether or not the community can remember the relationship of those questions to the questions that have been asked in the past, and the solutions. It's also interesting to see if, sometimes a fresh perspective on familiar questions generates, an observation of a problem with our approach, or highlights a particular efficiency in our approach that we hadn't considered before. So I like to look at these communication processes at a higher level and just notice the sort of cyclical, and hopefully it's helical nature of these kinds of conversations, where we revisit some of these questions, and oftentimes it's really good to get fresh perspective on our way of thinking about the solutions, especially with respect to security. And I think that there's not going to be enough security audit. So if anybody ever has any questions about that, please don't hesitate to keep asking questions until you're satisfied. Okay, so I have to do a special session with the private sale people in 6 minutes. So unless there's let's use the 6 minutes wisely. I guess we can leave the channel open for other folks, but in 6 minutes I'm jumping over to another channel. So any questions, comments, or burning issues that need to be addressed?
Yeah. One last question for clarity. Do you anticipate a need to do another raise, or is the co-op and the RChain holdings pretty much secure until the release of Mercury next year?
We're very, very close to secure. If we certainly if we make the mark that we wanted to, we know that we're secure. We're very, very close to what we consider to be the sort of conservative mark, but conservative, but definitely can make it mark. So I don't think that there's going to be anything like another raise between now and the ICO at Mercury. That seems very unlikely. Yeah. Cool. Unless there's any other burning issues for people, I would be grateful for 4 minutes between now. I am booked from now until 9 p.m. tonight.
I do want to mention that this is a social ledger trial with the Digital Life Collective. It's a Mattermost integration, and there's bounties available for people to help experiment with using the social ledger to organize the collective. It's just an experiment, but your participation is wanted, and you will be compensated for participating.
Awesome. Thank you.
Greg, could I assume anything that was said in the meeting today can be shared publicly?
Yeah, that's what these are.
That's what these are for. Just want to make sure.
Cool. All right, folks, I'm going to drop off. And you know where I am on Slack. You know where I am on Discord. So talk to you later. Ciao.
Thanks, everyone.